Welcome back. I'm glad you're still with us here on Morning at NTV. Time now for the Kickstarter discussion, and we'll be talking about the primary leaving exam results for 2024 that are due to be released later today. We do understand the officials from the Ministry of Education briefed the Minister for Education, who is also the First Lady, Janet Kataha Museveni, and everything was okayed. And today at State House, the results will be released, and of course the anticipation for thousands of learners who sat for that particular exam, as well as the parents who are waiting for the next course of action in terms of secondary education for their children, are also waiting in much anticipation. We'll be looking forward to that. Our team from the newsroom is on ground to ensure that everything is covered, and all the perspectives are brought to you later in our bulletin. So you'll be bound to keep it to NTV throughout the day for coverage of the release of the results. For the Kickstarter discussion, I have with me eminent persons in the education sector who will be helping us understand what ought to be given attention and how best we can improve, especially on areas that have consistently become sticky points. Today, UNEB, through the Ministry of Education, will release the 2024 primary leaving exam. It signals the start of the 2025 academic year, and that is the education system, how it's constructed in Uganda. Some say it's a unique story on its own, as it closes the education spectrum into one very, very elaborate cycle. With me is Desmos Mutanga. Desmos Mutanga is the principal at St. Julian Schools. Many thanks for joining us. You're most welcome. We're also joined by Deogracious Musimenta. Deogracious Musimenta is an educationist and researcher. Maybe shortly we will need to understand what your specific areas of research are. But we're also joined on set by Dr. Charles Tony Mukasa Lusambo. You're a board member at UWEZO. Yes. UWEZO is an organization that has dedicated itself to understanding how education patterns rolling out across the country. The very last time I interacted with officials, I learned that our learners are actually not learning. Maybe we will hear more about that. But allow me stay with you on this, particularly because of being a senior citizen. Sure. You will usher us into this conversation. In light of the release of the results, I know there's a lot of anticipation, no doubt, but it's a familiar story. It's one that happens, it's an annual ritual. What is it that you are looking out for this time round? Or you already have all the knowledge about the results?
Not yet at all.
Okay.
Because after quitting the ministry, definitely I don't get full dose of what happens there.
All right.
But what I anticipate now is the new approach to the entire teaching. The entire teaching approach has of late changed because we are now moving to the hands-on approach. If you can recall what turned out with the lower secondary curriculum, which some people call the new curriculum, but I think it is something that had come on earlier at primary level, although many teachers and educators didn't take note. It had come about 15 years before to ensure that there is the hands-on approach in the teaching methodologies. Yeah. But it really took root when the lower secondary curriculum was rolled out. So what the teaching now has to really change. The approach has to change, where questions have to really relate to what happens in real life. When you get the knowledge, how can you utilize it? And I think there is a quotation that those who will benefit from the 21st century are those who are capable of utilizing the knowledge they acquire. The issue is not how much you know, but the issue is how much can you utilize what you know.
That is right. Knowledge application.
Yes, application. And that this is where the teaching is supposed to be directed. And this is what I anticipate that the examinations really related to, because it is the methodology of teaching. And my anticipation is to see how do these children really approach this type of exams. And the teachers can bear witness with me that UNEB this time round brought questions which were more of related to application. So this is my anticipation, is to see how did they fare with this type of question, and really what can we say about the teaching methodology? Has it picked on? And so on and so forth.
Okay.
But if you talked about me being a senior,
no doubt you are.
Yes,
Yeah.
which I can't deny.
That's right.
So I want to take a leg into that. This is education we are discussing.
Yeah.
And if I relate to what happened before independence by 1962, well, there were three major issues that helped us gain independence. And the three major issues were, the first one was ignorance, the second was poverty, and the third was disease. And in my opinion, education was supposed to be key in addressing all
those three.
Now, as we go into whatever we do as far as education is concerned, in my opinion, should be geared into addressing these three vices. So at the end of the day, whatever happens, whatever we are discussing, whatever comes out, how far are we in answering these three vices?
Fundamental questions.
1962 to date.
Okay.
How far are we in, as poverty is concerned, how far away as disease is concerned, how far away as ignorance. And when we talk about ignorance, we are talking about education itself.
Education itself.
Education itself.
Okay.
The levels of literacy and so on.
Thank you very much for that very elaborate and insightful preamble to this discussion. And of course, we shall be returning to those aspects, especially how ignorance has been battered, or not battered for that matter, but also how poverty has been fought by being able to educate as many Ugandans as possible. Allow me engage the researcher, and I wanted to know what your particular area of research is within this education spectrum. And maybe as you talk to us about that, what do you anticipate in terms of the results that will be released later today?
Okay. Thank you so much to host me on NTV. I'm Cementa Gracious, and I'm a researcher. And my areas of research, my background of training is health services research, and basically I'm on infectious diseases of poverty. That's my areas of research. But I participated, to be here, I really participated in many education projects and programs. One of them is a multi-sectoral food security assessment in the country, which was conducted by Ministry of Agriculture and my senior professors and colleagues, Dr. Ampe, Accra University. I also participated in UN work, that is the World Food Program, UNICEF, and UNHCR for refugees, and I participated in a different refugee settings, whereby issues of food security and nutrition assessment, of course education is part of it. Yeah. And that's, I was involved in Nakivale refugee camp, or Ruchinga, Chakatu, Rwamanja, and the Great Karamoja, which was conducted by Dr. Henry Wamani. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot. I know what is really happening on ground here.
We're glad to have you on board, and later as this conversation flows, we'll be able to learn some of those aspects that are embedded within the settings that you conducted some of the research.
Yeah, I observed many things on ground, and what exactly these 1 inches want.
Okay. Yeah. For now, what do you expect in as far as the PLE results are concerned?
Yeah, we pray to God that actually results come and our children are happy. They really don't get disappointed with what they really performed. So I'm praying really those in Buyamba, in Lyantonde, Kachera, Kalangala, had to reach Agago, Kweni district, Nakapiripirit. They be happy with what they have got, and they really anticipate that actually their future is bright, because it is through education that a country has to thrive and actually obtain sustainable development.
Okay. Now, if we were to measure the temperature of anticipation, Mr. Desmos Mutanga, being a principal at St. Julian's Schools, must be seated on a hot one. Right now, the results coming through, you're looking at how have my students, my learners performed, and of course you'll be looking out for the optimism that comes with it and the celebration that does follow. Just bring us up to speed with how you're thinking about the thing right now, and maybe you have an idea how your students performed, because you know their potential even before they start the exam.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity given to me. Desmos Mutanga is my name, as he has said. I'm the principal of St. Julian Schools. St. Julian Schools, we are located in Gayaza and in Seta Mukono. We've been in this education sector for quite long. We are making 15 years.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Yes. So this year we shall be celebrating our anniversary of 15 years. We have the primary section, and I think that's the most important reason why I'm here.
That's right.
Though we can also look at the secondary section, how prepared they might receive the many that are going to be released today. Like you have said, my temperatures are low. I must commend.
All right. Yeah, that's reassuring.
Yes. I must commend the good work done by the Minister of Education. And you named gone are the days for our doctors when things would come out and we say very many are going to fail. As it is now, all grounds have been prepared for people to pass and the people to celebrate like the researchers made it. Those in the far regions, districts, they are more in Kampala as far as the education system is concerned. And we believe all children are going to pass. And I must also thank so much the UNEBU staff for the good work done, because I expect little, if not no malpractices, because there was a lot that was done on the ground. For me, I witnessed every levels of supervision being done to ensure that there is fair treatment of all learners. And I believe people are going to celebrate.
All right, no doubt. I love the dose of optimism that you do have, but I must be very realistic about the fact that malpractices blighted the exam itself when the learners were sitting, to the extent that some reports came in of invigilators conniving with certain schools on account of bribery to allow for certain things to happen the way they happened, and that could also make for news later when some of those incidents are cited. No doubt they will be. But allow me first engage the researcher, and this is on account of what happened during the marking process. There was a bit of a hitch in the marking of the exam, and was it a delay? What does that do to the system? Because in terms of confidence, when the results come out and then we look back and we're like, but there was something about the marking, and then I think the examiners had issues. How was this addressed?
Thank you so much, our host. And what I can tell you from the research perspective, or as a Ugandan LA person, to me, my interest is always the outcome. The outcome. Because what we need right now is, what is the future of this growing population? Where are they going to start from? Is their future bright? Are the systems really ready for them? Like, are everything in place? Here I'm talking about infrastructure, the teachers, the policies, and also issues of fees. So to me, when you go to issues of challenges, those are really system challenges from Ministry of Education, and I can assure you every challenge has a way forward. But what we can tell you as we researchers, the Ugandans, of course the beneficiaries, what we need is services. Organize yourself, plan, pre-plan, because these things have been happening from time immemorial. Exams have been there. This is the first time. So I think the whole issue is now government to coordinate, structures to work, not to talk, action-based kind of performance. Because what we need is, if they are marking exams and bring teachers on board very timely. Know the remuneration, the package. At what time do we need to make payment? Because you cannot hire somebody without payment.
That is right.
They have to survive, they have to eat, they have to feed their children, their families. So then also to go to Minister of Finance, release that money very fast. On
a timely basis.
Release money fast. Actually, it is one of the issues that is challenging performance, even in different ministries, departments, and agencies. Timely release of money, because at the end of the day, that money is to perform. And even government give accountability to voters. So what you need to do, release money, the quarterly release, let it come very early. Planners do their work, National Planning Authority, ministries, departments, districts, every stakeholder do their job. Then the minister will come and say, please, I want to see accountability. Accountability is not about money, what you've done.
That's right.
Yes, so to me, as a researcher, what we need as Ugandans is actually the outcome of interest, the future of this growing population. Is it bright? Is our systems in place so that we don't yield the population of beggars? We really yield the population of a productive population. Because it is in Uganda, what we need currently is a productive population. Actually, when the population is productive, we are starting from these children of ours. If they are productive, their future is bright. I can assure you, these foreigners won't disturb us that they want to give you a loan. They will suffocate with their money when we are completely independent here in Uganda. So to me, as a researcher, I always advocate for quarterly release of money, because Minister of Finance, this is taxpayers' money, release it very fast. People use it, technical staff, because they complain that technical people, we are hands off, we are waiting for politicians. Release that money very fast. It does what it's supposed to do. The rest is history.
Thank you very much. Very interesting and insightful perspective there. One that speaks to the realities of our education system, but also to the broader society and the governance system as we know it here in Uganda. Dr. Lusambu, the number of pupils who sat the exam or registered for the exam were 798,771. And this was across 15,311 centers compared to 749,254 the previous year. It's a representation of a 6.6% increase. Every year there is an increase. It's a statistical ritual, so to speak. But when it comes to numbers, what should we go into introspection over? Especially at Uwezo, I know numbers are things you do, you crunch on a daily basis. Where should our attention be on these numbers? Is it those who dropped out and why?
That issue really goes too far. It can cause a long discussion, which flows into what my researcher has just alluded to.
Just quickly use some 3 minutes and then we shall return later after the break.
Right. You see, with numbers, you definitely have to see what really happens, because whenever numbers increase, resources have to increase.
That is right. And
one of the flaws we have now in our system is where we have population increase versus economic increase. We have quite a big difference between the population growth and economic growth. So when you talk about numbers increasing, you will find facilities not increasing in tandem, and you will always have challenges in that category.
That's right.
You are talking about the numbers of candidates increasing year in, year out. Yes. But do facilities increase in the same way? Do we get the same numbers of centers increasing? Do we get the same numbers of invigilators, supervisors, and so on increasing? You find that some of those areas can't increase because the economic factor has not in tandem raised. And it has caused quite a number of issues for quite a time, even where I used to see it. every year as a commissioner for primary, I used to receive about 3 million new students entering the system. But you could ask for more classrooms, ask for more teachers, ask for more desks, ask for more textbooks. They wouldn't come your way. So this is a challenge, like he says, one of the biggest challenges, population growth versus economic growth.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to have to go for a break right now, but the conversation will continue when we return, and we shall engage the principal at St. Julian Schools on the increasing attention that is paid to private versus government schools, and what private schools are doing that government schools may be dragging feet on. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Many thanks, Stephen Abide, for bringing us up to speed with the particular movement, one that seeks to enlighten especially the youth on how to be better citizens. Congratulations on the team there for what they are doing. Let's return to the studio, and conversation is on the primary leaving exam results for 2024 that are due to be released later today. The Minister for Education, who is also the First Lady, Janet Kataham-Seveni, is expected to preside over that function and finally release those results. What usually happens around this time, the anticipation is high, but later as the day progresses, celebrations will erupt, and schools, parents, and just about everyone, including the learners, will be on the front pages and at the forefront of celebrating a milestone that is no doubt worth celebrating. When you make the transition from primary to secondary, many people consider themselves men or now women, but at the end of the day, all transitions do bring us into yet again another set of circumstances. With me in the studio to discuss what we ought to pay attention to in terms of our education sector in light of the PLE results, I have Desmos Mutanga, the principal at St. Julian Schools. I have Deogracious Musimenta, an educationist and researcher, as well as Dr. Charles Tony Mokasalusambo, a board member at UWEZO. Before we went for the break, I had told Mr. Desmos Mutanga that we would begin with him. So, all guns on you. You are an administrator at a private institution, education institution, that's St. Julian Schools. I know the battle between private and government or traditional schools is one that comes to the fore whenever results are released. I do not want to say the private schools are going to give the traditional or government schools a bloody nose again. That would be making it a little bit too dramatic. But tell us about your experience in governance and managing education dynamics within private settings. What should we look for, and why should private schools be given all the attention that you seek, maybe, if that's a way to put it?
Thank you so much. I must admit the fact that that is the competition we are looking at. And it is a healthy competition. Is it government
very
versus
healthy. Very healthy.
Private? Our survival depends on performance.
That is right.
In private sector, if you don't perform, then you are a joker. And one of the yardsticks that we must look at are the results. The results gives us numbers and it gives us trust in the parents. Yes. And by all means, we must ensure that our children perform. Oh, I must say that we are not any different from the government-aided schools. As far as funding is concerned, we are actually struggling in the private sectors due to the high taxes and so on. But the most important thing is motivation.
Motivation, yeah.
I may give an example of the science teachers in high school, secondary schools. They are being paid highly.
4 million.
4 million, I must, as the doctor is saying. Than what we are paying them in the private schools. It is rare for a school to give 4 million to a science teacher.
Sure.
But when you look at the results that come out, you may compare and you really see there was work in private schools as compared to the government-aided schools. But one important thing that we must appreciate is that when one establishes a school, a private school, he owns it. It is a family. it is like a home. You must see all children eating. And if there is a point where you say child is not eating well, you must ask what is the problem.
What's
and if it is the mother who is not preparing well, you say, please include this for this son X, daughter X also to enjoy the meals. And that is what we do in private schools. Unlike in government schools where there is a lot of bureaucracy, even when the government releases money, there are so many hurdles which somebody must go on to see that this money reaches the teacher. And by the time this person gets the salary, is not so much motivated as it is in private schools. So for me, I look at this performance in line with the motivation. If we can motivate our teachers very well, I may give an example of those government schools in urban settings. Talk of Namiriang Junior Boys, talk of Gayaza High, where the parents also come in and say, yes, our children must perform and there should be a special budget for our teachers to be motivated to attend to our children when they are very happy. And that makes these children perform. And you may find that some of these schools I'm talking about may equally match with the private schools in other areas. So the point of performance, the point of the results we are to get, it's all about how much you have put in. Let us wake up, parents, and join the teachers to say that we motivate our teachers, and these teachers do a good job. They are all trained from the same universities, the same colleges, and these children, we are the same parents who are giving birth to these children. So once we motivate our teachers, definitely the results are going to be good.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a question I think you would be hard-pressed to answer. You talked about the fact that by all means we must ensure these learners perform. If I may ask, is reports, for example, of connivance, for example, in order to ensure that some of the students receive samples of some of the questions. Some schools have been accused of going to that extent. So when you said, by all means, we must ensure that these students perform, one out there might be constrained to think, okay, what is by all means? That's a question, a hard one for you, maybe, but the researcher knows exactly what I'm talking about. Maybe you can take it on.
To me, if it, like for example, me, I studied from a UPE school, a rural school. That is Nawabali Primary School in Rakai.
Many of us did study.
Yeah, and also and so on. But what I can tell you, we used to hear schools in Imbarara. Kampala, of course, I couldn't know Kampala. But what like we rural children, no rural parents and beneficiaries of education, our focus is passing. So the rest sometimes we don't know. So to me, like me as mental gracious, if it comes to malpractice and maybe schools passing higher than others, my focus is always the continuation. Because like in UPE, private, the issue is now continuation. Maybe from P7 to secondary. From secondary to advanced level, from advanced level to university. I think that's where the problem is. Because we have to use the statistics. If you see the growing, if you look at Uganda Population and Housing Census, you find that children who are 5 years to 9 years, that's around 6.6 million. If you look at 15 to 19, that's around 6.1 million. If you go now on the age group of 10 to 14, around 6.1. So now we ask ourselves, how many are in primary 7? The completion rate. How many completed? So to me, it's a lot there. We need to really task government and also maybe schools, government through stakeholder engagements. So my question is always, what can we do, especially to vulnerable households, the rural poor?
That's right.
Yes. So, for example, if you go to Lyantonde, go to Kashagama, go to Chenshama, Mpomode, come here to Rengo, go to Masaka, Chamuliwa, Viramalia, come to Rakai, go to Kasankala, Kachera, Rwamagwa, Charurangira, Dwaniro. You can find actually 30%, almost 30% they didn't even complete senior 4, around 20%, they didn't even finish P7.
Okay.
So now the question goes to government. Because at the end of the day, surely they can't manage to go to private schools. Buyamba, St. Cecilia Buyamba is a faith-based school, a good school in Rakai, one of the best schools in Rakai, but parents can't manage it. They can't manage fees for that private school.
Yeah.
So as a UPE, me, I will basically talk too much on government side. What can we do? Those issues are that we bring everybody on board. Okay. Yeah, because the outcome of interest actually is not the completion rate. How many finished P7, managed to go to secondary, managed to go to advanced level.
I'm glad you bring up that point, and also the point of the cost of education. We shall be returning to Mr. Desmas Mutanga later. People assume that the cost of education in private schools is on the high, and there must be some sort of cap or consideration for the part of those parents that could be struggling. But UWEZO does a lot of this. You basically make incursions of study into how schools are performing in terms of even the continuation aspect. If a school has had 100% pass rate at primary leaving exam level, does this batch of students, learners, when they transition into secondary, do they kind of present with the same pass rate later in life, or there is something that is yet to be explained in between there that many Ugandans want to get to know how or why it happens that way?
Yeah. Just to answer it right away is to say, not always.
Not always.
There are some who pass highly, very, very well, but later on they fall off the line because of certain factors. Not necessarily that the school has cheated, but some factors sometimes dictate this. For example, at primary level, many children are, can I say, not pampered, but they are overstretched, over-supervised, over-taught, and a child is really with a teacher almost 24 hours.
24 hours.
When this child goes to secondary, things change. They say, you are on your own, you are an adult, please read, please night studies. And if this child is not very careful, this child will not perform the way he performed at primary, because of the supervision, because of the over and so on and so forth. So there are certain factors. Much as others said that there was cheating, it could also be possible in some few areas. But the answer is not always that. It is not always that those who perform very well at certain levels must continue to perform well. Not the circumstances now, that are occasion upon them. UWEZO is an assessment organization. We really deal in assessment, and we have quite a number of data. We do a lot of research in this. We don't stop here in Uganda. We go East Africa. We go all Africa, all over the world. So that is our niche, assessment. Yeah. But now we have to be a little ahead of assessment, because we know that as you assess education, there are issues. For example, there is input into education, there is the process, then there is output, and then the outcome. Much as we put emphasis on output, input, process, we consider output, yes, input, process, output, and outcome. There is no time to explain, but that is it. That is right. It all encompasses that. But if we are to consider all of them, our emphasis is on output, much as we give advice on all the rest of the areas. And we are now deep into advising our government on to all the 4 areas. Because you cannot get the outcome unless the input was well. You cannot get the output unless the processes were properly followed. That's right. So this is where we go. That's why I told you that we are now looking at the hands-on approach, and we want to see how it turns out. We are also inclined to see, is the process really proper, that it will give us the intended output. If we are talking about hands-on teaching approach, is this the same that UNEB goes on to assess? Because there is what we teach and what we assess. If the two don't match, then you are not fair, especially to the candidates, even to the teachers.
How can that happen?
What you teach should be in line with what you will assess.
Are you suggesting that there are schools or institutions that are not doing the due diligence to know or be in line with what the UNEB requires them to teach?
Of course, of course. Have you heard about what we call what they call misfiring?
Misfiring.
Hey, you can easily misfire. You teach A, but they will assess D. And then you.
Why does that happen? The school hasn't
it happens.
Approached UNEB, or UNEB hasn't been able to communicate. How does that happen?
One, it can happen due to misinterpretation.
Misinterpretation.
Have you heard about the curriculum?
Yep.
There is the curriculum. National Curriculum Development Center sets the curriculum. And now the teachers have to study that curriculum and teach according to that curriculum. UNEB has to set according to that curriculum. And if the school does not teach according to that curriculum, definitely.
We have a head teacher here with us. Take us through how it happens. For example, if the academic year 2025 is beginning, and there is a set of, for example, let's say, okay, this example doesn't work for primary, but let me take it to secondary. And there's a set for literature, a set of books that will be assessed at the end of the year. Sure. Isn't the school supposed to align itself to that particular threshold so that learners don't reach an exam and it's a totally different set of books that are being assessed?
Thank you so much, moderator. Like I told you, and you earlier on challenged me that it may be a hard question for me to answer.
No, I knew we would later return to it. At that point in time, I needed you to. We are back at it.
Our principle in private schools, many of us, they are just two: motivate and supervise. Motivate and supervise. If you don't supervise, you will always get what the researcher is. The doctor is telling you. Yes. Because as it is, the curriculum, like he has said, it is well laid, right from the national, and in our trainings and in our operations, we know very well that narrow down from the national to the school level, and the benchmark and compare with other friends. Now, what is hard in this is that many schools, more so, I may say our friends in the rural setup, is that they will just own everything as institutions or as schools, which is not the case with us in private schools, mostly in urban places. Like it is in the holidays now, we have very many workshops going on. We are planning what we are going to teach. Teachers are in workshops, and these workshops are being facilitated by experienced people like the doctors and so on, to simplify for them what it means by this national curriculum that you must follow, which is not the case for our friends that may be very far from these towns and so on. So in that way, we may misfire, as the doctors said. Wow. Which is not the case with us, but once you supervise and you have motivated, you will get the right product. Okay. My research has told me, and he has told us, his is all about quality. How many? I mean quantity. How many? How many will continue? Yeah. But for us in the private, we are saying the quality matters. Quality does matter. Which kind of Ugandans are we producing? That is right. Yes. So great. Very quickly, you can have.
Never expect where you don't inspect.
There you have it. Never expect where you don't expect.
That one. And when he talks about motivation, it's not only money. Motivation has quite a number of areas. Yeah. Even UPE, where he's talking about, some UPE schools are performing excellently because there is a type of motivation. Motivation moves right from the homes, the parents, the children, the teachers, the environment, the community. Motivation is big, and once there is motivation, you can expect results.
Okay, thank you very much. Gentlemen, we're going to have to go for another break, but when we return and enter the final bend of our discussion, we shall talk about aspects including plans to establish school districts grouped by socio-economic characteristics. We shall also talk about general literacy. Does the number of learners passing in a certain grade or passing highly demonstrate actual literacy on ground, or is a case of numbers above everything else? Stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, the discussion behind the scenes is as very, very exhaustive and interesting as it is here on air, and I'm glad you're still with us wherever you are watching Morning at NTV from. In the studios, I have Desmas Mutanga, the principal at St. Julian Schools. I have Deogracius Musmenta, an educationist and a researcher, as well as Dr. Charles Tony Mukasalusambu, a board member at Uwezo. We are discussing education matters in light of the anticipated release of the primary leaving exam that is for 2024, expected later this morning by the Minister for Education, who is the First Lady, Janet Kataha Museveni. Before we went into the break, the discussion had touched on just about everything, performance, results, but there are issues that are pain points within the education system. There are plans or suggestions for school districts across Uganda, and this is exactly what it's all about. Grouping by socio-economic characteristics for what is described as a more targeted educational approach, and also have a house district evaluation board in each of the school districts. This one will be responsible for assessment needs within that particular district. I do not know how feasible this is, but this is a question that has all the hallmarks of research conducted on it and how it can be rolled out. Take us through that.
Thank you so much again, the host. And from the research perspective, I'm happy government is planning for that. And really, we congratulate the government of the Republic of Uganda, and of course our chairman, the President of the Republic of Uganda, and Parliament, and other stakeholders. Before bring an intervention in a research, there is what we call feasibilities or piloting.
Piloting.
So preparedness now. Is government prepared? Have they done some feasibilities, maybe in Katakwi, Kalaki, Obonji, Hajumani, Moyo, Raka, Idiantonde, Sironko? Have they done some pilot to see how it will work? What is on ground? What are the targets? Okay, the objectives of this intervention. Yeah. Then at the end of the day, as we are planning, then they have to do a maybe if you have a feasibility study or a report, then we'll, after 2 years or 3 years, we do again a midline to see how far have we moved with what we are looking for or the desired objectives. Then at the end of the day, we do an endline intervention to assess the performance of this intervention. So this is my stand as a citizen of the country and a love of development. If, for example, if you say you're going to start district education boards and so on, I really appreciate it, because there are some key observations as I've been traveling in the country. I was in Kamuli when I interacted with head teachers, school management committees. There are some good things I really observed. One, there is a school feeding program. For example, from the government perspective, there is that UPE school feeding program, the school garden models. So I really loved it so much because we look at problem analysis. Why are they performing badly? Why are government schools not doing well and private schools are performing well? You're getting the point there? So to me, I appreciate the school garden model, and these are key activities that has to be supervised and even have to be supervised by the district task force, the education board. Of course, it has to bring in board the faith-based organizations, the opinion leaders in the district, COW, RDC, so that this thing doesn't remain on paper, because government has a tendency of really planning and things doesn't work out. So let them be prepared with the research and with clear objectives. But to me, if they can really incorporate school garden models in these schools, for example, in Lakai, let children go to school, have actually expect lunch. Okay, maybe those from P3 to P4, from P1 to P4, have something to take, maybe on breakfast. Of course, we're talking about porridge. Then P7, P5 to P7, they can have lunch, posho. Because those are things I observed in Kamuli, Tololo, and also in Intugamo. They are there. So now, if you go to the Anton de Rakai, Slonk, and other districts in the country, because one of the issues that are disturbing these school-going children is short-term hunger.
Short-term hunger.
Yes, short-term hunger. From home to school, first of all, there's a distance.
There is a distance.
There's a distance, so they walk up to school. So when they reach school, around 10 a.m., they're hungry. The teacher is teaching. Also, somehow they are not motivated. They are saying, "No, you know, we are government." But the whole point is, we have to appreciate that actually, because we are here. We have to appreciate that UPE. We appreciate that government played a credible role to design this intervention. Every program, whether it is political, whether it is system, whether it is technical, it has to be with some barriers. But how to overcome them? But we have to appreciate the government of the Republic of Uganda. That actually, UPE was a great intervention. Now, the point is, if we really enroll school feeding program, and I appreciate Mama, First Lady, Janet Kata Museveni, she's the champion of school feeding. But my request to all district technical boards, DEOs, Minister of Education, government, parliamentarians, please, let us start like yesterday. Let this school feeding program start in government schools, especially the UPE, even government aided, even private. They will learn a lot. So, so that we really achieve quality.
The private people have their fingers on points, and the food and the dieting and all that. Is that the reason you charge parents highly?
I don't
talk about the cost of education in private schools.
Thank you so much. If it is all about schools, we must just accept that a school is a home.
That's true.
Give your children the best meals, they will give you the best you expect of them. And you will least visit the hospitals.
That's a good one.
Now, the hospital in this case is the assessment we are looking at. At the end of the day, when your child is growing, how many times do you visit the hospital? In the school setup or in the classroom setup, avail the best environment for learning. All children are the same. But if the children are not eating like the researcher is saying, it will be a wastage of time for you to compare these ones who are being well fed with good instructional materials
against those
who are not seeing a textbook and they are using, the teachers are using, we used to call them yellow notes during the doctor's time. But of late, we have gone into the digital world. All the teachers have the smartphones. The yellow notes are disappearing. But when you see how much time does a teacher in a rural setup, a government setup, spend on the internet, and compare that person with somebody teaching in homes daily. So, once we don't provide, then we should not expect the best from this. Now, coming back to the point of how much we are charging, I told you at the beginning that we are struggling and we are surviving. Yes. But the most important thing is that we make a good use of the little we get from our stakeholders. But when you compare how much, my doctor was telling me he was once a commissioner. I don't know whether I'm right.
That's true.
But when you ask him how much money does the government pour into the education system, and how much is the output they get, compare that with the private schools. How much are we collecting from parents? And how much are we offering?
In terms of output.
In terms of output. And satisfaction by our clients, the children, you will find that we are not charging any money.
It's efficiency.
So the most important thing is to understand that the government must support the private schools as well, because we are all teaching. We are using all Ugandan children. But you will find that when it comes to taxes in parliament and everywhere, and that is our outcry. As head teachers of private schools, proprietors, we are saying, can these taxes be reduced? If they are reduced, we shall also reduce on the school fees, and we shall not suffer so much. But this money that we are charging surely fits what a normal Ugandan would apply to see that we get the best out of our children.
Okay. One thing I know is that in the next weeks or so, some receipts on the internet will blow up people when they see exactly how much money a certain school charges as opposed to another. But like you say, I think it's very reasonable to say what you put in determines the output, and if the students and learners are passing highly, then no doubt. Doctor, the results will be out in a few hours' time.
Yeah, sure.
Do you think that it's going to be yet again another referendum on the UPE intervention?
It will always be. It will always be. Because at the end of the day, when the results come out, analysis will go on.
Yeah.
And after analyzing, we shall get out reasons, issues, why this, why the other. And definitely as you get to try to get the answers, that's almost a memorandum. You are trying to give treatment to the issues. The question is, do we get the treatment as required so that we get a better result come the other year? The problem is there, but it goes back to what I said earlier: economic growth versus population growth. But there's an issue I want to touch very, very lightly.
Please do.
Very lightly about what he said about private, government, and so on and so forth. Really, the children we teach belong to the nation. But in our education goals and objectives, there is the issue to do with the relevance of education.
Yeah.
Relevance of education has not yet been achieved. As much as it is a goal, we have not yet achieved it. And when you shot a question to him about grouping, regional groupings and so on, for me, I wish I could live more years to see this. Maybe that one will be addressing the relevancy.
Yes.
Because as we talk about hands-on education, we are talking about relevant education. And when I go out to teach agriculture to a child from Karamoja, I would love this child to be taught about how to care for the cow, how to milk the cow, and so on and so forth, the benefits and so forth. Then when I go to teach my grandchild in Masaka, I teach about coffee. This would be the relevant education, but we are not yet giving this. So if we were to group, to group the schools, and so that even our teaching is aligned, it would be solving quite a number of issues. It's talking about school feeding. In some areas, children can go home and have lunch and come back to school.
They get back to school.
But in some areas you cannot.
People have crossed rivers.
Yes, but then you give a sweeping law that let it be like this all over the country. Is this relevant education? And is it achievable? We should start looking at things which are achievable, so that we address them accordingly and then be able to say, yes, we are addressing the input, the process, the output, and definitely the outcome will come our way.
Okay, as we wrap this conversation up, allow me to stay with you and ask the question, when we juxtapose the education system today, or last 25 years, to be very specific, against the education system after independence, the one that was based on the 3 prongs you talked about, the fight for against ignorance, poverty, and disease. There is a section of Ugandans that maybe has to, they have to interest themselves more with the education process, and this is what the researcher said. Academics, the elite, had left the politicians to decide for them what they should follow. Yet some politicians may not be necessarily knowledgeable about these aspects, so much so that now we are seeing academics, elites also joining politics in order to go to parliament and make these particular decisions. It's a mix, but as a senior citizen, you've seen the best of both worlds. How do you advise on this?
What I advise on this is really to say we lost some step somewhere, and if you can go back and pick it up, probably we can get a way forward.
Which step was that?
The 3 vices were to be guided by ignorance. Fighting ignorance would help us cope with the disease and the poverty. Unfortunately, we somehow muddled them up and concentrated on poverty and left ignorance hanging. So if we can go back to the drawing board and see how best we can really put our heads together, resources together, and address education so that we fight ignorance amongst our population, I'm telling you, many of these vices would really be overcome. Look, United Nations, where we are signatory, has quite a number of ratifications. And one of them is to say the national resources, between 13 and 15% of the national resources
must go to
education and health.
Health, yeah.
But we are still on 8%, 7–8%, versus the 13–15%.
No doubt.
So that's why I'm saying where population growth versus economic growth. Let's put emphasis on that. But there are some factors we must consider when we are discussing education. As I finish, our education system should address the completion rates. This is a very big outcry.
Yes.
Completion rates. Our examination system should stop being examination oriented. We are now here, the whole country is at ransom because of results. Left, right, parents, student, the pressures are very high because of, if you were to consider how much money goes into examination, my God. So the examination-oriented system, in my opinion, leaves out a lot to be desired as far as quality of education is concerned. You take a child to school for 10 years and subject this child to 4 days examination, and you say at the end of the 4 days the verdict is decided for this child. What about the 10 years this child has spent at school? Then the hands-on, the hands-on must be emphasized. There should be no compromise on that. I have heard that our children have been senior 1, senior 4, hands-on curriculum. Now senior 5, there is no possibility of continuing. This must not be the case.
Okay.
We are losing it.
Thank you very much.
Then the teaching force.
Teaching force.
The teaching force.
All right.
Because whatever we are discussing at the end of the day, the teacher
are the drivers.
Yes, the teacher is the driver.
Okay. Mr. Researcher.
Yes.
I'm sure you've been given the problem statement.
Yeah, true. Yeah, really, I appreciate Dr. Rusambo. Yeah, surely. As Ugandans, and I told you before that actually we have systems, and system has to work. In government, there's what we call multi-stakeholder engagement. Ministry of Education, its role is more in, its roles maybe possibly maybe education, fostering, IEC materials. No, Ministry of Health, the nutrition component, health issues. Ministry of Agriculture, please let us provide inputs to farmers, the pigs, the heifers.
Yeah, mechanization.
So that we boost household poverty. We boost household income. Because at the end of the day, the challenges here in the country is household poverty.
Yeah.
And everything starts at household level. So to me, to government, this is my message to government, and we are part of government. And because we have now to do mapping, stakeholder mapping and engagement. Minister of Education, the issue is one, who are those key players in education sector? NGOs, faith-based organizations, international community, donor community. Then what specific roles are they playing in the education sector? As you map out that one, then you take a paper to cabinet, go to parliament. Actually, UNICEF is playing this role. UESO, Plan International, Save the Children, and many agencies. Now, government, where should we start? Some of these issues have been tackled by these our implementers or our stakeholders, and we appreciate them. Now, this is where we should focus, and the government is not looking at that. I have a feeling government is not actually looking to that, and it is actually a very big tool.
We're glad you brought that to their attention.
For us to plan very well.
Yeah.
Then we have to revitalize the vocational education, as Doctor is saying. Yeah, let's teach relevance education so that our children learn to know that actually by the time I finish, I have to be an engineer, I have to be a technician, I have to be a lawyer, I have to like that, so that we don't spend a lot of time trying to teach Mau Mau rebellion and so on. Then there is this issue which I always really pray to God that actually everybody is aware. There's what we call these government releases, the money. The money now. For example, the capitation grant.
The Auditor General just
the capitation grant, which is released by Ministry of Finance. Actually, schools, the UP schools, and is the head teacher of Chimuli Primary School aware about that is capitation grant released, and how much is it? Okay. Lastly, which I can't fail to say on this on air on NTV is one. Now our parliamentarians. And that's why technical people, the planners, professors, doctors, you can't run away from politics. We can't run away from these politicians.
These decisions are being made by people who don't understand.
These people go to parliament to do dramas and so on. They are the one determining our salaries. They are the one determining policies. You find somebody who want to design a policy on health systems. And you really ask yourself, really, these are issues we need to come on board and plan for.
Many thanks. I strategically decided to end with Mr. Desmos Mutanga because it is you that has all the focus today. You're looking at the release of the results, what it will mean for the school, what it will mean for the next transition. You wrap this up for us.
Thank you so much, our moderator.
Very quickly.
I must admit that as a Minister of Education and the government at large, they have done what they can. Yeah. In my view, if I may flash back to the days of my doctor, we used to have serious monitoring tools at all levels. You would be in a school and every moment you get an inspector of school knocking. You would see all of your teachers organizing themselves to supervise, which is not the case now in our government schools. And it is my plea that the Minister of Education and the government at large can look at this. Okay. When it comes to what we're expecting now, I know all parents, like I said at the beginning, and like from our researcher, we expect the best from your name, and we shall all be glad to receive these results.
Okay.
As far as the secondary is concerned, we've been prepared to receive these children.
All right. Thank you very much, Desmas Motanga, Principal St. Julian Schools, for wrapping this up for us. Thank you to the gracious Masimenta, educationist and researcher, as well as Dr. Charles Tony Mokasa-Lusambo, a board member with Uwezo. It's been a pleasure having you on board this morning. Your perspectives have emboldened our understanding of the education sector and maybe offered a little bit of hope for those that were beginning to lose it. As we close, birthday wishes go out to Diana from Jenny. Jenny says her therapy bills would be outrageous if it weren't for you. Your friendship is valued, and with God above everything else, let's continue growing together. Happy